Excellent.
All right, so for those of you that have joined us on the call today, we just wanted to welcome you. We are excited to have the opportunity and our webinar this afternoon, Conversational AI, and specifically how it can be a rapid response solution for today's business realities that we're seeing happen all around us. My name is Cheryl Cluzio, and on behalf of the team here at Online, we are really thankful that you took a little bit of time out of what we know is a busy schedule to be able to join us. Today, I am excited to have Scott McCrea join our session. Scott wears a few different hats. I think I've seen his title say CTO. I think I've seen it say Chief Innovation Officer. But in whatever title he chooses today, Scott leads some of the technical direction for a company called Datomar Labs. And we've invited him to talk specifically about how organizations like yours can use conversational AI today to help respond to some of the challenges that we all are facing. Now, Scott and I have had the opportunity to work together over the last number of months, and I really do believe you're in for a bit of a treat today. Not only is he a great guy, but he has a wealth of experience using technology like conversational AI to drive innovation. And he takes a very practical approach to thinking about conversational AI, both in the short term and the long term. So I think you're going to find this session really enjoyable. And our hope is that you're going to walk away with some really good practical nuggets that you can take back to your teams. But before we get started, I just wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping items. We are going to be running a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. So you should notice that the chat feature has been enabled in your session. You'll find it in the right-hand side of your screen. And so if at any point during the presentation you have a question or something comes to mind that you'd like Scott to elaborate on a little bit further, just pop a note in that chat feature and Scott will review all of those at the end of the session. And of course, don't worry if you miss anything. We'll be sharing a copy of the recording of the webinar as soon as it's ready. So I think that's all from a housekeeping perspective. Scott, thank you again for joining us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you, Cheryl. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here. So, as Cheryl mentioned, I work with a company called Datomar Labs. We've, over the last year and a half, 2 years now, built a conversational development platform called Convey and Convey Studio, and it's used for designing conversational experiences. And we won't touch too much on the platform today, but we will touch on how platforms like it can be used to stand up solutions very quickly, especially compared to how we were as little as even 12 to 18 months ago. A quick little background on myself. I guess I've been around long enough that I was asked, do I really need to have a website? Then I was asked, do we really need to make it mobile? And now we're being asked, do we really need to have this chat thing enabled? And is this chat stuff really going to do what it says it's going to do? So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how long I've been around. But let's get right to it. So I know everybody has a lot to do and they're busy throughout their day. So what we're going to do is touch on very quickly a little bit about what conversational AI is. And then, like I said, we'll talk about how you can develop using conversational AI development platforms. And then that'll be fairly brief, and we're going to really spend most of our time taking a look at an actual example of chatbot implementation for an HR team and how that chatbot implementation was constructed. This will give you background on what it would actually take to stand up your own implementation and hopefully some food for thought moving forward with enough perspective that you could take what you've learned today and see how and where else within your organizations you could apply conversational AI. Conversational AI, it's a machine that a person can talk to, very simply put. This could be a chatbot on a website, social messaging platform, voice assistants, or for those of you who are familiar, this could even be a voice-enabled device in your car. Realistically, we are in the middle of another interface revolution. We've had, at the beginning, we had physical buttons and knobs. Some of us still remember having to turn a dial to clunk to change the channel. We went from there to graphical interfaces with the desktop computer, mobile, moving into touch interfaces. Now we're on the precipice of a new and as far as I'm concerned, one of the most exciting things, because now for the first time ever, machines are speaking human and they're doing it on our terms. We no longer have to spend time to learn interfaces and to learn how to use a specific device. You can simply ask it how to do something or simply ask a device to do something for you. So, conversation is the new user interface. According to some key industry leaders, 80% of customer interactions will be solved with well-designed bots. 60% of customers want easier access to self-serve solutions from customer service. And most importantly, 50% of enterprises will spend more on bots than traditional mobile app development by 2021. In addition to this, right now, a lot of new information is coming in recently from Gartner and others that chatbot experiences, when compared with the same workflows with humans, people are preferring the chatbot experience in an overwhelming majority due to the speed of response that you get from a chatbot. And organizations are able to keep a consistent user experience time and time again and adjust and optimize that user experience with 100% accuracy for their clients. So now let's take a quick look at the building blocks of conversational interface. So a conversational AI development platform is essentially a software platform that is used to build conversational user interfaces, such as chatbots, virtual assistants, messaging platforms that run on things like Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp, etc. These also can be used to work on existing platforms such as SMS. And very important, they still, as many thought with the new advent of chat and all things chat, that voice might actually fade away, but it couldn't actually be more the opposite. Voice is gaining a resurgence in many of the support channels, as now chatbot platforms support voice, and we'll take a look at how that actually happens. So what these platforms have evolved to do is, 2 years ago, you had to go and code in the majority of your conversational experience from scratch, and every single experience that you created, you had to redo the same amount of work. Now, you can take all of these conversational experience building blocks, like NLP, machine learning, omni-channel capability, sentiment analysis, etc. All of those key conversational experience building blocks are now available and integrated into a conversational development platform. What that allows you to do is significantly reduce development time and time to market. You're able to have all these pre-configured APIs built right in, omni-channel support. And when I say omni-channel support, what I mean, for those of you familiar with the app development world, at one time you had to develop, if you wanted to go with Android, you had to develop specifically for Android. Then you had to develop specifically for Apple, and then you had to redevelop the same app again on a website platform. What omni-channel allows you to do is have one chatbot design and build experience pushed out to many different platforms, whether they be voice, SMS, or on a messaging platform. And so that's what it means to be omni-channel. The other key element of a conversational development platform is how it enables its users to not only update the experience, but also design the initial experience between the developer and the conversational experience designer. Because it's really a yin and yang thing, just like the graphic user interface of any website with the back-end technology experts. So the same thing exists when you're designing a conversational experience. You have the people designing the interface and the conversation flow, and then there's all the technology that has to be woven in and completely interconnected seamlessly with those conversations. So now we're going to take a look at the components that make up a conversational AI development platform. So of course, the front-facing thing that we would all be used to seeing is the client-preferred communication channel. So here you have many of the common messaging and communication channels that we use today, whether it's the Facebook Messenger platform, WhatsApp, web chat, a voice chat, SMS, RCS, which is the new version of SMS with rich media, or for example, internal platforms such as Slack and Teams, and of course, there are a few others. So when you take a look at these preferred channels, how do you then integrate those with an existing back-end infrastructure? So with these channels, they take the information from those channels for all of these systems, and they put it into what is called text-to-speech and speech-to-text. What that allows the AI systems to do is take any voice utterance that is communicated to it, or any of the text that is sent to it, and process that through what is called natural language processing, to where it looks at what the user has said and understands the intent and what is trying to be accomplished at that moment in time. It then processes that information through, depending on the request. It may actually have to go and access a data layer to pull up maybe some information about your account, for example. Or if it doesn't have enough information from you, the bot logic will say, we need more information from this person before we can access their account. It'll route it through to what's called the natural language generation engine, which will then come back to the speech engine and go back into your selected platform and say, hi, Scott, we just need to validate you. Would you please provide me with your account number, etc. And then once it has the information required, it would come back and validate your account, for example. So the key thing from here on a conversational development platform is, of course, the ability to interface with your data. So there's custom data, but in addition to any custom data sets you have, many companies have systems of record that have a significant amount of either customer or sales data in them that also can be brought to the forefront through the conversational interface into all of these platforms and be accessed via these platforms by using a conversational development platform. Overall, conversational development platforms basically fall into two different categories of how they actually function and where they're positioned in the market. So you have conversational platforms that are on from the low to high flexibility and the low to high functionality. And just because something is in the low functionality, low flexibility area over here doesn't mean that it's not a good solution. It just means that it has a finite set of use cases that it can actually solve. So things in this area here would be very good. Or if you have a Facebook ad and you wish to do a couple of quick responses and make it a very simple communication back and direct them to your website. If you wish to go and carry on a true conversational experience that really provides your users value across an omni-channel experience, that is where you need to come up into the high functionality, high flexibility area, where you have tools like our Convey platform, Twilio, Dialogflow, etc. The key is, as I mentioned earlier, 18 months ago, and it's hard to believe. I know everybody says the speed of technology is ever accelerating, but it has never been more true than now. 18 months ago, what would have taken 8 months of development and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, realistically now can be achieved in weeks with tens of thousands of dollars. This makes the barrier to entry to the technology extremely low, and really makes it so companies can get their feet wet with the technology. And then technology is really structured so that you can start with an introductory level of service and then build onto your platform, build on additional use cases, and keep training and keep learning along with your conversational experience. The key with conversational experiences is to have the flexibility built in now to your conversational development platform so that you somewhat future-proof your technology, because the same with your website, where you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into not being able to do things for functionality in the future and have to redo your website in 2 years when the new mobile device size comes out. The very same thing is relevant with conversational AI. So the key things, if I'm looking at a conversational AI development platform, are to have the ability to use different natural language processing engines, use some of the different AI commodity engines out there, from whether they be from IBM, Google, and Amazon, etc. Finally, the final key with the conversational development interfaces is to make sure that you have a company that has had some experience. Now, you're not going to find some company that says they have 8 or 10 years experience doing this, because quite frankly, as we all know, this technology didn't exist that long ago. But 2 years or 2 or 3 years under your belt, and this time in in day and age is a significant amount of experience if you've been doing things properly. So I hope I've been able to give you a little bit of a detail on what it takes to make up a conversational experience and giving you enough background to understand how what we're doing today actually happens in the background and what to look for when you're looking at vendors to actually implement a conversational solution for your company. So today, our company is receiving significant inquiries, and these two that can be categorized into these two areas. How do I deal with the increased interaction volumes, especially when faced with staff reduction? And how do I enable my staff to work remotely from home? We're going to focus more on the former of these two, and in the future, we'll be doing another webinar to focus on how do I enable my staff to work remotely from home. So if we take a look at your standard business, not all businesses will have this much information. It depends where you land on the scale from small to medium or to large size business. But many businesses will undoubtedly have an employee handbook, some type of FAQ, potentially have an online knowledge base. Given the size of some of the larger businesses, they'll have bigger systems of record. But it doesn't take a very big company to have to be able to utilize something like Slack or Teams. And of course, in today's environment, there's pretty much every company out there has had to develop some type of COVID-19 policy. So if we're going to take a quick look at what the internal HR use case could be for an FAQ style knowledge-based bot and how easy it is to actually set up. So if we look back at the diagram that we started with earlier, and where you have the infrastructure in place here with the speech to text, the machine learning layer, where it contains all of your bot logic, the bot's ability to talk back to the actual platform, and the custom data information layer. All you would need to add into this platform is you take your COVID-19 policy, some form of Q&A, often just set up in an Excel document, and this is literally just the questions that you need to train your bot on and what capabilities you'd like it to have. So that can be questions as simple as, when is our company going to start the work from home policy? What are the vacation days allowed around COVID-19? Can I take holidays now? All of those types of questions can all be loaded in. And then even if you don't have a knowledge base, many of the conversational development platforms, such as the Convey platform, actually have built-in HR knowledge bases where they can take your policies and your questions and input those into a database. And we'll see why having a light knowledge base is a requirement at minimum in a few moments. So then what happens, the next key, I guess, decision that you would need to make after bringing your data to the table and into getting it prepared for the platform is you need to decide what communication channel you're going to work with. Today, we're going to start with Slack as an example for today, because we're going to do an internal example of what we would work with. And the particular company here, eTech Innovation, uses Slack channel. But again, the magic of a conversational development platform is that you can build it on Slack, and then in the future, if you wish, could go provide that same experience in a web form, in a web chat, or if you actually wanted to create a specific phone number or hotline for this specific information, you could create a toll-free number and have people call into that number and self-serve the information, and the exact same information that you uploaded over here in your data and information layer would be available via that call-in number. So let's take a quick look at an internal inquiry via Slack. So here's Scott. Scott was sitting at home in the evening at 10:02 p.m. and he had a question for his company. So instead of asking and sending in his HR department a question, he went online to his chat on his mobile phone and said, "Hello, I have a quick question to the HR team bot." The HR team bot replies back with, "Good evening, Scott. How can I help you?" So the bot recognizes the time of day and addresses the person appropriately. From there, Scott simply asks a question with the expectation of receiving an answer. Do I get any more sick days due to the coronavirus? That's a good question. To help out during these challenging times, we've added 5 extra sick days. It's not so much the content that matters, but what has happened here is the bot, by using this text recognition, has understood an intent from Scott, which is do they receive more sick days and due to this certain circumstances? And so now what the bot is able to do is go and search its information and get back to Scott accordingly. So, and additionally, as getting back and saying it has 5 extra sick days, the Scott can now even clarify further with the bot, does this apply to me even if I am on contract? Now you could see how this conversation could actually take place now over multiple emails with different questions each time. But in a bot, it can be solved in one experience in real-time communication. The bot replies back, yes, our contract employees are entitled to use the extra 5 days. Not only does the bot reply back with a simple answer, but it also says, here's a link to our COVID-19 paid leave and sick days policy. Now, the key is, just like when you're on a mobile device and designing for mobile versus desktop, you have to recognize the platform in which you are communicating to your end user with. In this particular case, you cannot create an optimal user experience by bringing up a 500-word response in a chat. Because in many cases, a particular platform will not allow you to, of course, put that many letters and words into the response, but also it doesn't make for a very good user experience as well. So this is where the knowledge base comes in, and the bot will actually link through to the applicable article in the knowledge base, allowing the person to self-serve the information. And now this conversation that they started at 10 p.m. at night is complete. The user has now had their request solved, and most importantly, this is a request that didn't have to be waiting for an HR manager at 9 a.m. on next morning at work. So now the bot will work to close off the conversation appropriately, ask, is there anything else I can help you with? And it says, it seems there's new information all the time, says Scott. What if things change? Well, if you'd like, I can add you to our COVID-19 company updates. Should I add you? So now what we've done is the bot, once you have people engaged in your channel, and this is the same way that when you would look and go through your phone, and if you wanted to message one of your work associates or a friend, you would scroll through your list of recent conversations, find your recent conversation, and ask that person a question. The vast majority of the time when people go to start a conversation, it's with their top 10 to 15 people that they contact on a regular basis, and they don't need to search for that contact. Well, the same thing would apply here. You'd have this conversation and this thread open. So now the person is opted in to receive more information. In this case, it's from their own company. So of course that is not an ask that requires many of the required legal opt-ins that there would be otherwise required in an internet lead scenario into a chatbot. In this case, with the employee, they've been simply added to the company's updates. And so now that when a policy changes or something new comes out via the news cycle that's relevant from the local government, the company can actually very quickly go into the bot management platform or work with their vendor and push out an update via everyone's text message, via their Facebook, or any of the other platforms that this particular person has subscribed into with your company. So now they've been added. The person says, no, I'm great. Thank you very much for everything that you've done for me. Case closed. Very good example of a finite use case on a routine action and an inquiry that was handled by the bot, offloading all of these repetitive routine tasks from your staff, allowing your staff to look after things that actually require humans to do them and with human understanding. And moving forward with that, though, we understand that, of course, not every conversation and inquiry will be solved by a bot. And that is, I'm sure any of you have seen with interactions you've had with a bot, it doesn't take long before you're outside the use cases that bot was designed to deal with. And so that's where edge case handling and bot learning really comes into play. So now Scott has gone to sleep and woken up the next morning at 7:13 a.m. decided, what happens if I do get sick and I need more than 5 sick days due to COVID-19? In this particular case, the bot has not been trained to answer this question. So it says, hello, Scott. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that. But again, here you go. Here's our complete policy. And a well-designed bot, of course, will just not let you stop, won't stop there, but it offers an additional helping hand. It says, would you like me to send your information and your question back to my HR team? So it lists out the specific question that was uttered to it just moments earlier. Scott says, yes, that would be great, thinking that's incredibly helpful. Now, I don't know how many of you have been through the process of canceling your flights and hotels over the last 3 to 4 weeks, but I myself had to do quite a bit of that. And in some cases, I was actually able to interact and achieve many of the things I set out to do, surprisingly, with bot experiences. And in other cases, while I was on hold, I was told I had to wait and not to call back for 7 days or longer until my case was actually urgent. So this is where it comes back to the bot's ability to scale up and answer and manage all of these questions, whether they be an internal or an external use case. It has the ability to be infinitely scalable, to be 1 or 1,000 or 100,000 people online with that bot at any given moment in time. The moment you update that bot with some new information, it's not like you have to train staff to understand the new utterance and the new question. The moment you update that bot, now that bot is trained 100% across the board and is ready to handle these questions. So it really has the ability in this time, as things are ever so changing and dynamic, where you can have your bot, get it out into market with the specific use cases that you realize are a priority, have edge case handling around things that you know that they might be asked that maybe the bot isn't A, suited to answer, or B, that you don't have an answer for yet and that can be directed through to a human. And then most importantly, as these use cases come up, because you can't anticipate every question that's going to be asked, as these use cases come up, these outlying cases are then brought to the attention of the bot management team, and then the responses and the resolutions to those use cases are implemented. And then moments later, the entire bot network is now trained to handle that use case. And in an omni-channel world, you don't need to go and update your Facebook bot, and you don't need to go update your phone system, IVR, etc. You update your one core system, and it infinitely is scaled throughout your entire platform, and there's no need to do repetitive training this way. So if we close this off and take a look at where we looked at the system of records that we looked at in the infrastructure earlier, you have, okay, the HR bot says your inquiry has been sent. The reply will, they will reply at their earliest convenience. If you need, you can follow up with an email to HR and reference a case number 573-5. So what the bot has now done is actually integrated with a little bit of robotic process automation into some of your internal proprietary systems, and is now fed into your internal system a ticket and started off an actual ticket for resolution, and reference that specific ticket number back to the person so that it can be handled and referenced later. If in any one of the other channels, if they called up on the phone, for example, and they called your HR toll-free number, that toll-free number could now ask them and say, if you're calling about an existing case, please say that case number now. And then they could utter that case number, and it would automatically be able to pull up the current status of that case from the internal system and brief them on the status, allow them to ask questions about that case number, and they could actually log via voice or messaging system and in turn an additional inquiry to that system and have it be added and into the case log, all in an automated fashion. So now let's just take a quick look at the chatbot summary. What did we achieve here with this HR chatbot? Well, we empowered your internal staff to ask a question and receive an answer. There was no searching a website portal through pages of documentation. Most importantly, the user was able to do what users like to do, and that's choose the path of least resistance and not send an email to HR at 10 p.m. at night. All that is required to set something like this up is a simple Q&A. If you had 15 or 20 questions, you can have an HR or you can have an external facing bot on your website that people could use with the understanding of the scope that this is a bot that can help them understand if your store is open, what locations are open, when these locations are available for what types of services. All of those things can be updated within a matter of hours and days with simple Excel sheets into the back end of a conversational development platform. As I just mentioned and previously, in this day and age, we are able to do these types of things in days to weeks, depending, of course, on the size and scale of the project. If you wanted to literally have a 20 or 25 or 30 question Q&A, something like that can be done inside of a week. Iterative learning process is the key here. You can launch a small experience and you can build that not only within the specific vertical of the department in which you launch that bot in initially, but you can spread that bot's capabilities out through from the initial customer service side back into sales, and you can have that bot go cross department, which allows you to have probably for the first time ever, one of the first 360-degree views of a customer ever, because now when people are reaching out to you via Facebook, you actually have the ability to track that person through with their conversation, through an initial sales cycle, through to purchase, and through to their ongoing customer service interactions, all with that unique person in that unique conversation. So with the chatbot and the infrastructure that is available in today, you can prop up these experiences very quickly. You can increase the scope of service for these experiences in a matter of hours to days once you've launched the initial platform. And really, these types of things can be made very simple on the front end if you're working with an experienced team that knows what the technology is capable of and is capable of working with you to help uncover the specific needs that you have. So we'll just take a quick look as we come nearly to the close of the webinar. We'll take a quick look at a couple of practical use cases. So as you've seen from an internal perspective, we've obviously covered some of the COVID-19 policy and procedure examples. From a purely HR standpoint, employee onboarding, any questions employees may have with layoffs, et cetera, how things can be managed with benefits and benefit enrollment, and vacation days, paid time off are all fantastic HR examples that can be supported with this type of an infrastructure. On the other side, you have external use cases, which, I mean, we have two small use cases here, but they're realistically almost, if you can think of a use case or if you have a challenge, it's most likely that a bot will be able to solve that challenge given enough background information. So from the external side, bots can have questions on your support site, on your website with key questions, and if it doesn't have the answer, as we discussed, it can always be properly designed to escalate beyond its scope and route your inquiry to the appropriate person. People are then able, of course, to be able to register for updates from your organization. Most importantly, you'll be able to self-serve that same information across, whether it's a web chat panel on your website, or they'll be able to phone in for support via customer experience as well. So again, I just wanted to provide everybody with a quick introductory to what it takes to make a chatbot with a quick use case that we've been working with our clients with recently. I hope this was informative. Now moving forward, I would like to get to what I call the fun part of the presentation, which is where we're able to answer any of your questions. But first, I'd like to thank you for attending, and just remember, there's a bot for that. So I guess now I would turn it over to Keegan. If you had any other questions from the group, I would be more than happy to answer any questions for the next number of minutes.
Thank you very much, Scott. Hello, everyone. My name is Keegan. I'm going to be helping Scott manage the questions in this portion of the presentation. Just a little heads up, you are now free to type questions in either the chat or the questions box. But if you would prefer to ask the questions yourself, there is an option that you can raise your hand virtually, and I will be able to unmute you for that. So we're going to give everyone a second to see if they would like to raise their hands, but we have had a couple of questions come up during the presentation. So to start, Scott, the first question is, how long does it take to get this up and running?
All right. So that is, I guess what you'd say, a bit of the proverbial loaded question. If you want to, as I mentioned, start with an experience of something like the HR bot, for example, or any other type of knowledge-based bot where there's an FAQ style of question. If you had 40 to 100 questions, for example, and you had some of your responses and everything ready in a document, this is something that from once you approve a sign-off with your vendor, you should be able to have something like that up inside of a week. I hope that that answers the question.
Thank you, Scott. There is a follow-up to that one. It says, what if we just have documents in SharePoint? Can this still work?
That's a good question. So whether or not the documents are in SharePoint or any other online internal system, it doesn't really matter where those documents are housed, because as you saw earlier, the bot can link through to any one of those sections. All we need to do is work with the team on the other end to help with the question and make sure that that question and answer are linked through to the appropriate resources within your company, and to make sure that the people accessing those resources, of course, have the permissions applicable. But yes, SharePoint and any other online system would all work just fine.
Thank you. And third one just arrived. It says, can we start with just Slack and then add others later? Or to be cost effective, does it need to be done all at once?
Good question. So what that kind of comes back to is the concept of omni-channel bot development. So in this particular case, I can't speak for every type of system that's out there, but properly designed conversational development platforms should allow you to add on additional platforms as required, I guess. So you would basically, you'd want to set the platform up based off of your strategy and what most fits your environment. If your current customers are all coming in through a particular web chat in a customer help area of your website, well, then obviously that web chat makes the most sense, as opposed to offering them to come through one of your, say, your Facebook Messenger platform. But if all of a sudden you have a community that's growing and around a Facebook message board or something, and they want to interact with you as an organization and gain some insights from you via your Facebook messaging channel, a well-designed conversational development platform would be able to enable that additional channel in the future with very minimal rework. So not much additional work than it had it not been done in the first place. So you can start with Slack. You can add in additional channels as they become relevant or as needed. But overall, I would recommend that if you set up a roadmap of, hey, this is where we're going to be in 6 months, this is where we want to be in a year, and based off of how we see our customer interactions, and you plan accordingly. Yeah, there would be some efficiencies, of course, to be able to plan out of the gate. But, all right. I hope that answers the question. Keegan, were there any other questions today?
Yes, sir. We just had one. Mr. Francois Samar, he just sent one in for our questions box. Thank you, sir. The question is, to be used by both, does our knowledge base have to be structured in a certain way?
Correct. And so did you say to be used, to be used by bots, does the knowledge base have to be structured in a certain way? Again, a well-constructed bot development platform will be able to accommodate your knowledge base. The biggest thing with existing knowledge bases is that they have some of the proper tagging for that case, that resolution, and around that document, so that as the scope of the questions grows beyond, say, the initial 15 or 20 or 50 questions, that then automation can be brought in where the bot can recognize an intent and it can automatically on its own go and map itself to the appropriate documentation. So to answer your question, bots will be able to predominantly consume your data the way it sits today, especially if the links between your knowledge base and the bot were to be constructed and set up manually. If you want to set up a larger scale project and you're asking the bot and the AI to go through and parse your information and read your information, there will be a little bit more of a requirement for your data to be in a more structured fashion. But that would really come back to the individual use case. So I would say you would likely be okay the way you are. Keegan?
All right, at this time, I do not see either a hand raised or more questions. If anybody else has a question, please feel free to send a note to us in the questions or chat box or raise your hand.
All right. Well, if one more comes in before I close off here, then we could answer that. But I would like to thank Online Business Systems, one of our valued partners, for delivering our conversational solutions on the Convey platform, for inviting us to the webinar today. I'd like to thank all the attendees that took the time out of their day to show up. And again, I appreciate the questions. If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to reach out to the online team, or you can call the number on the screen and somebody would be more than happy to help you. Keegan, just before we sign off, did any other additional question come in?
Nope. Just
All
Mr.
right.
Samar, just saying thank you very much for the webinar. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.